sticker on it,
Yeah.
and it was put up by the people of Hyde,
Yeah.
because Jeff was based in the camp there,
Yeah.
and waiting for Normandy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they left from the pier. You know, they went along the pier and got into the boats to get out to the ships to go to Normandy.
Yeah.
And he reckons when they went, they said, none of us ever thought we'd come back.
Yeah.
We knew what the odds were.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there would have been about, it's about 80 people in a particular commando group, wasn't it?
In a commando, but then they were all cut down, they were broken down into like 12 into, you had Q1, Q2, Q3, like that.
Same in my dad's lot. My dad was N3.
Yeah, well, Jeff was Q1.
So, yeah.
And,
so did they lose, on his beach, did they lose many people?
They lost, yes, because they were sort of Arromanches and Les Hameaux.
Yeah.
Hameaux were the two, their area of activity.
Yeah.
Well, I met up and Jeff met up, when we went there, we happened to see a notice in the local paper that they were having the dedication of this stone to the beachhead commandos.
Yeah.
And he said, I've got to go there because I was based there.
Yeah.
And we went, and he just saw one guy with a green beret. He left me.
Yeah.
He went, and he was with the men.
This is in Hythe.
This is in Hythe.
I'll have to go and have a look next time.
I go there. Well, I was going to say to you about the pier. When they went off there to get into the boat, Jeff used to go there. He said, this is my special place. He says, when I go, shove me off the end of the pier. What he meant is ashes scattered into the sea.
Yeah.
He told his son, he told my son, his stepson.
Yeah.
And when he died in the October, that is exactly what we did.
Yeah.
So I go there, and I always put some yellow roses into the sea for him. He always gave me yellow roses.
Yes.
And I always go down there. We'll be having a ceremony in June, D-Day. We always go there.
Yeah, yeah. But
and it's getting less and less and less.
But I mean, the Second World War veterans are they're all getting on a bit now, aren't they? It's,
of course.
Although you do get the odd, because I think it was, I don't know if it was the last French veteran of the First World War, of the Somme. He died not very long ago. I think it was about 116 or something like that.
Is it Alistair? What's he called? Allingham. He's 112.
Oh, yeah. He's a great old bloke, isn't he? He goes around the schools and explains to them that in no uncertain terms that wars are not very pleasant, you know, and they're not like they are on the TV. Oh dear.
How old are you, Paul?
I'm 50-something. 50, a mere 50, I think I'm 53 or 54, I think I might be. 54.
That's the age that I was when I married Jeff. He was 54.
Well, my wife is younger than, my wife's 14 years younger than me.
Nothing.
So, our kids...
Nothing.
My oldest kid is, how old is Alex? He's 14.
Yeah.
So they keep me on my toes.
Of course they do.
You know.
My son is 40. He was 40 last November, and my son is 52.
Yes.
And I have two step-grandchildren in America. The eldest is called Jeff, after his granddad.
Whereabouts are they in?
They're on the Finger Lakes area.
I don't know where that is.
Upstate New York.
Yeah.
Finger Lakes, sort of not far from the Canadian borders, where they have the 1,000 Islands and all that.
Yeah. If you were to move to Canada, is that the part of? Would you be near there or not?
No, I think 5 hours flying time from Vancouver.
Is Vancouver on the west coast of Canada?
Vancouver's right over on the.
Heavens above! Yeah.
On the Rocky Mountains. British Columbia.
Is it on the coast? Is it a break?
Yes.
Because I think I was reading something about the warspite, the HMS warspite, going into Vancouver Harbour at some point during the Second World War.
Yes, then. I'm a member of the local Leamington branch of the Royal Naval Association, and our numbers from 80-odd when Jeff and I joined it in the 1990s dropped to 36. They're all dying off.
Yes.
I went to 8 funerals last year, and it's not nice.
No.
It brings memories back. And one of the ladies there, Patricia, her father was on the warspite, and she goes all over the country to all the reunions.
What was her surname?
Emerson.
This fellow I'm thinking of is called Bennett. Because a lot of these guys left, they were interviewed by the War Museum.
Yeah.
And you have to pay through the nose to get them. But
this is it.
And I think of the amount I pay in tax and how, but I've got various interviews because my dad was on the Kent, HMS Kent, out in the Far East and then the Mediterranean.
Of course, they've got a new ship called the Kent.
Oh, yeah, sure, but I mean, my dad's the old one was broken up. It survived the war.
It's much smaller now. And I know about this because I used to be doing a sort of a private job when I'm supposed to have retired for a lady. We used to do promotional gifts.
Yes.
And a lot of our work is for the BAE systems, and they built ships.
Yeah.
And HMS Kent, it is HMS Kent, was
in the
named and launched about 2 years ago.
No, I know those. Because I grew up, I mean, my dad being in the Navy, we used to live in married quarters in Rowner, down by Gosport.
Oh, yes.
And I can remember when I was a little kid going to the Navy Day in Portsmouth Harbour.
Yes.
And standing on the deck of, I think it was the last British battleship, which was the Vanguard, I think it was.
Yeah.
And, the whole dock was, the whole heart, the Solent was like full of ships, submarines. It was, you really kind of had a navy in those days.
I know, and that's what's so disgusting that we haven't got one now.
Well, no, I know, but you see, the problem is, darling, is that we're no longer the great imperial power that we used to be, and the United States have really taken over that particular role, haven't they?
We know why, I don't know. Yes, it's the imperial. I've just got a piece of paper. Roger Blake, when he died, he was the chap who did all their training up in Ardentinny. His widow gave negatives of what was in the Ardentinny Outward Bound Museum at the time.
Yeah.
And I went up there 2 years ago at Easter with Jeff's son and his granddaughter, and we laid a little wreath, because there's a tiny little memorial there, which one of the guys made himself up. And to be standing on the shore of where their huts were, where they stayed and did their training, was a very, very funny feeling. It was though all the ghosts you were sort of, seeing around you. And there's a tiny little church there at Stroon, and the plaques, they had memorial plaques put up to the officers and men of the beachhead and commandos, Royal Naval Commandos.
Well, I saw a ghost in a way in terms of finding these films, because my sister and mother told me, my mother's dead now, she died a couple of years ago, but they told me that they'd been sitting around watching some TV program in the early 1960s, and my dad was watching it as well, and it was about anzio. And suddenly my dad jumped up and pointed at the screen and said, "Good God, that's me." He was on with the tin hat on, a bit of old newsreel or something. So we knew that Dad was in one of these old newsreels. Now, bearing in mind he's been dead since 1974, a couple of years ago I looked through, I found these old newsreels. You can see little tiny crappy versions of them on the internet, and you can see the original films up at the War Museum. And I found, up at the War Museum, I found the original bit of film which was taken on a landing craft when they were loading up with soldiers on the beaches near Salerno to take them to the troop ships to sail up to do the landings at Anzio. And large as life, because my dad was fairly distinctive looking, there he is at the back of this landing craft, waving his hand in the air with a tin hat on, sort of pushing these soldiers, and it's very distinctively him, and you can also tell it's him because he had 2 fingers missing on his right hand because they'd been chopped off in the breech of a gun when he was 18. So there's my dad, and actually it's the only bit of, well, there's a couple of other bits I've found actually since, but this is the most character, and there's my dad on the computer screen, sort of waving at me, and it was almost,
And this is after he died?
He'd been dead for 30 years when I saw this. It was like a ghost. It's a very young version of my dad, he was only sort of mid-20s or something at the time, early 20s.
Yeah.
And there's my dad, who I haven't obviously seen since he's been dead since 1974.
Yeah.
There was Dad. I never thought I'd see him move again, and there he is. He's, it's so characteristic of him. It's good Lord, it gave you the butterflies, I got quite emotional, to be honest.
Well, it would be. You would do.
I showed it to my sister, and she was kind of in tears about the whole deal. So it's.
Well, you were meant to see it, you see. I'm a great believer in that.
Yeah.
You were meant to. I'm just looking in the file here. I've got the Royal Naval Commando Association, founded on the 16th of May, 1982.
Well, you see, my dad had been dead for 8
That
years.
is why.
Yeah.
You see, at that time, it was the patron, it was Vice Admiral Sir Patrick Bailey. And the president was, they still got this Right Honourable Earl P. Nelson, still alive and kicking. Useless article, he never comes anywhere.
Okay, Jude, I'll give you a rest from all this interrogation. But there was, so the person...
I will take out the names and the addresses and telephone numbers of anyone I find for Nan.
Brilliant. I love it.
And I can only suggest that you write to them all, Paul.
Yeah.
Whether they reply or gone gaga, their wives will then say sorry, but he can't do much about it.
Yeah, no, I know.
But at least it's a long shot.
Okay, that would be lovely, and I appreciate that very much.
That's all I can do.
Sure, no, but there is one other thing you can tell me, which is I thought it was Ron Lawrence or his son who was going to go to see Mrs. Gay Lander, Ken Barry's daughter, to pick up the Naval Commando records. No, you tell me it's not him who was going.
No, it's not him, because Ron Lawrence gave quite a lot of his papers to
Ken.
To Ken Barry, but also he passed them first and foremost on to Ken Oakley, who was the chairman.
Sure. Now Ken Oakley's stuff. What happened to all that? Then?
Exactly. Now his sons are very au fait with computers.
Yes.
Now Ken Oakley's wife, Josie, has gone into a nursing home. She's got senile dementia now.
Yeah.
Ken died last year. I saw him in June, and he died in September.
Okay, now
all his paperwork and all is probably been taken over by his son.
Yeah.
I don't know whether his son has passed them on to the British Museum.
Yeah.
Because he was going to all sorts of places. He used to always go up to the Field of Remembrance at Westminster every year.
Yeah.
They used to march in Whitehall to the Cenotaph in November.
Yeah. I think I've got...
You may have that. Now, I've got his son's address. I will give you that as well.
Lovely. Now, and the person who will be going to get Ken Barry's records is not
Ken Oakley's son.
That is Ken Oakley's son who will be doing it.
Ken Oakley's son is the one whose mother's now gone to a nursing home.
Gotcha. And it's Ken Oakley's son who will be going out to Raleigh or to...
No, Ken Oakley's son is probably not. This is it. I must do a check-up with Gaylander and find out. She may have got some further information the last month than I have.
My sister spoke to her, I think it was the day before yesterday.
Right.
And Gaylander, apparently, my sister may have got this wrong, but she said that Ron Lawrence, and she gave me a phone number, is the treasurer of the association, and Mrs. Lander said he is going to pick up all the records and take them to the War Museum.
No. I think she's got it a bit wrong, or maybe your sister's misunderstood. Ron Lawrence was not the treasurer.
No.
I was the treasurer.
Okay.
And Ron Lawrence was the secretary.
Okay.
Who did all the correspondence, everything landed on his desk.
Yeah.
Ken Oakley was the chairman, but didn't do very much in that way. He was there as a figurehead.
Okay, then, Jeanette, as far as you last heard yourself, who was the person who was going to be picking up Ken Barry's...
It was somebody from Norman Draper, whether his son would arrange.
Yeah. So, but
I think we have to work back to Gaylander
Yeah.
Find out what the state of parties is, to whether they've sorted them, boxed them, got the files together now.
Yeah. So are you sort of relatively chummy with Gay Landa or not?
Yes, I've been in. I haven't met her in my life, but
No.
she and I have had I've been keeping in touch with her while both parents were in hospital.
Sure.
We built up a good relationship, and she's very kind. She said, I'll always keep in touch with you.
Sure, sure. I mean, she did, according to
I
my...
told her
Yeah.
what would be best for as a memorial to her father,
Yeah.
because he used to be one of the main things. The Royal Naval Commandos formed a memorial trust fund
Yes.
to be for the children, school children up in Ardentinny area in Arromanches,
Yeah.
for any of those who were poor kids who
Yeah.
wanted sponsoring when they were between 16 and 18,
Yeah.
going on field trips.
Yes.
And this was the balance of the money we had when we wound up
Yeah.
and sent it up there. It had to be incorporated, and it'll be a permanent memorial to the commandos.
That's a very nice kind of memorial, isn't
Exactly.
it? Really?
Used
Because
the purpose they wanted it used.
because a lot of those guys didn't come from the richest of backgrounds themselves.
Exactly.
I know. For,
Exactly.
you know.
Their idea was for it was character building, outward bound schools, and all that sort of
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what, Jeanette, I mean, if you can find out anything more than we can find out about what is going to happen to those records,
Yes,
I would be very grateful.
to know, because
yeah, absolutely.
then again, your father was with NAM party.
Yes.
Your father's name was
Was Raymond.
Raymond, right? That's like Ray Bromley. I remember that.
Yeah.
Name was Seaton.
Yes.
And he was N.
He was N3.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, my dear. Lovely
Beautiful.
talking with
And
you.
to you, it's been one of those informative phone calls.
I'm sorry I haven't got more information. I'm pretty good at this sort of thing.
Thank you. Believe me, some of the people I tried to talk to are very, very deaf. Yes. And so you find yourself shouting, very loud. It's not worth the bother after a bit, because a lot of them are deaf and getting a little bit senile.
Yes.
And talking to somebody who's deaf and senile is
It's very frustrating.
it's a trying experience, yes, because it takes you half an hour before they have the faintest idea what you're talking about. But you want to talk about,
It's not easy, and it is frustrating.
No,
I know why you're wanting to do it.
Yeah, sure. All right. Oh, but I think it's been
But
lovely.
you've got a son.
I have a son.
Yes.
Oh, I have two.
Well, there you are, you see.
Yes.
Why you want some record to be passed on.
Well, I tell you what, I've been doing this sort of business about 2 years, into my dad's history, and believe me, we knew nothing compared to what we know now. We're getting a very good, do you know what I mean, picture of the old man in some of the best days of his life, I think, which is very nice.
Last book that David Lees brought out, The Beachhead Assault,
Yes.
was one of the best ones, because it was not the author's written words so much as the memories of the guys who were there.
Yeah, sure. The only regret I have about that is he's got a list in the back of those who got, medals and blah, blah, blah. But he didn't know, obviously he didn't know that he didn't know my dad existed when he wrote the book.
Yeah.
So I got to him.
All the information he got about that list of medals,
yes,
he got from Ken Barry.
That's it. You see, if I got to Ken Barry a little bit too late.
Yes, you did,
so we didn't, if I'd have got there a few months earlier, then my dad would be in the thing at the back of the book.
Yes.
But I did say to David Lee that if he ever gets it reprinted, he'll chuck my dad in there. He said he would.
Yeah. So this is it. It's nothing really you can do about it. Some were alive, but still didn't give him any information because they weren't capable of it.
No, but it's amazing how you can fill in the blanks of something that happened 60 years ago.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Even from this...
But you see, this is where we used to have a crowd of us, about 10 or 12 of us used to gather in one of the pubs in the forest.
Yes.
Every 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
And us girls used to sit at one or two tables, have a gossip, and the men sat at tables separately to start with before we ate.
Yes.
And they were just what they call lamp swinging.
Yes.
And this was their form of counselling.
Yeah.
They were able to talk out. Didn't we have a bad time here? Did you know so-and-so? Oh, I remember him coming in when he was really badly shot up at elbow or this or that.
Yeah.
And it was their way of getting it out of their systems. Now, of Jeff's commando, Q1,
yeah.
He and Ken Green are the only, Ken Green's the only one left. Jeff's gone.
Yeah.
Lapidge is gone. Eric Gear, the officer, was gone.
Yes.
There were 6, 7 of them, they've all gone. So it's all the widows now left.
Well,
Me, Joe Soap, is ringing around and keeping the girls going.
I mean, doing a grand job.
Well, I have to. I do it for Jeff, you see.
Yes, yes.
Something was very, very, it was very special. They had a wonderful band of brothers. That's what they always call themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose it's a two-sided coin, you know, because they had it a lot worse than we have it these days.
Yeah.
But in some ways, the other side of that coin is because it was a lot worse, it was a lot better. When it was,
my God. As they said, they were the finest days of my life.
Yeah,
and they say, what the hell, you're being shot up?
Yeah.
I mean, my Jeff was lost 2 ships.
Yes.
And he was in the water before he was picked up. That was on the Malta convoys.
Yes.
When he finished at Normandy, he didn't sit around. He was sent out to India for training for the invasion of Japan.
Well, what was the ship he was on during those Malta convoys? Do you know the name of it?
Malta, yes, it was HMS Welshman.
HMS Welshman. Okay,
yes.
I'll have a look at that. It vaguely rings. What was it wasn't a pedestal, was it? It was an Operation Pedestal, or was it an earlier one? You know the one where they got the Ohio in with the oil? They just about made it.
Oh, I think they made a film of that, didn't they?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It was a huge convoy and it was absolutely decimated, but they did get enough oil through to keep Malta going, you know, just for
the planes they had there, one of 3 or 4 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I know that. No, it was HMS Welshman, and then that was after he was with Menestius.
Yes.
And that was when that was bombed and holed. He says, you just patched it up, and they limped into Maryland for their repairs there.
In the United States?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was another little episode.
And then after that, was it the Naval Commandos after that?
Then he came back after doing it was Naval Commandos after that.
Yeah.
That was like between 41, 42 and 43.
Yeah.
He was sitting, waiting for his next posting, which is when he was told about this hazardous enterprise business.
Yeah.
So he volunteered for that.
Because I will never know, because apparently some of them were pushed into volunteering. It was kind of compulsory volunteering.
Well, a lot of them were, like the ones who were younger than Jeff, they were taken, they were conscripted, in other words.
That was it. It was meant to be volunteers, but as in the Navy, I think it's, the volunteers could be chosen.
Yeah, well, they joined specifically for Royal Naval Commandos.
Yeah.
They had some of the guys had never been in a ship.
Okay.
Which is why Jeff and the others who were in ships, like your father and Jeff, they kind of thought themselves a bit superior.
So what year was your husband born then?
Jeff was born in 1924, I think.
Oh, so he was 3 years younger than my dad at the time then. So my dad was born in 1921.
Yeah.
So he was a little bit older, and that's why immediately they made him an acting petty officer, because I suppose he had a bit more experience and was perhaps a little bit older than some of them.
He was 18 in 1939.
Yeah, he was 18 in 1939. That means it was
18 or 39. He was 21.
Hang on, he was 18 in 1939. He's the same age as my dad then. My dad was born in 1921, August 21, so they were the same age.
So at the end, in November was his birthday, November the 19th.
Oh, August, September, October.
August, what am I talking about? October the 19th. October the 19th, Jeffrey was...
He was 3 months younger than my dad.
Uh-huh.
But then he lived a little at the other end of his life, because my dad died, like I say, in 1974, so your husband lived a lot longer. Yeah, so he got a better ration at the, at this end.
54 years in Africa.
Yeah. It's a healthy,
Kenya and
good,
Uganda and Tanzania and where else he went.
Yes, it's a continent for people with an adventurous streak.
Oh, yes. There's always that thing about, the grass is green on the other side. He was a Geordie. Mine was born in Gateshead.
Did he have the accent?
No, he didn't.
Ah, was
His sister did.
Was he, what kind of, was he like a working class background up
Oh, yeah, his grandfather was actually training for the vicar.
So he was reasonably...
St. Peter's School in York.
Yeah.
I think he came from a fairly sort of, not affluent, but quite comfortable.
Yeah.
But then his father was the black sheep of his family.
Yeah.
Jeffrey was brought up for many, many years by his grandparents because his father and mother had come down to London at the time of the Arromanches.
Yeah, that's in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so why didn't they bring their son with them?
Oh, well, exactly, because they didn't have a house, they didn't know where they were living virtually. He was a painter decorator, was his father. Yeah. And also horses and things.
What do you mean, also horses?
Well, he was in the First World War with his father.
Yeah.
His father, and he was very much in the sort of artillery, but with horses.
Yes.
Riding.
Yeah. I'm with you. We mustn't get on to the First World War because I'll start talking about my grandparents, and then that'll be another 4 hours on the phone. Which would.
Well, I can go back for my grandparents, my dear, being in India. I went out there in the year 1862.
Oh Lord! Now you I can't.
That was 5 years after the Indian Mutiny of 1857.
Yeah, you see, my history of that particular period is a little bit. I watched Simon Sharma about these things, but it does get a little bit vague.
I love history of any form.
Well, it does. You see the world in a different way when you know how it got to be the way it is now.
Exactly. I mean, when I look at Afghanistan today,
yes.
This is where my grandfather was. That is where my father was born in Agra.
Yes.
Went to school up there in Quetta, Rawalpindi, Peshawar, which they were fighting in what is now Afghanistan. It was called the northwest frontier then.
Well, they never had much luck then, did they, really?
But then does the British government, any government in this country, ever listen to people who are on the spot? No.
Well, I mean, the Russians, they got thrown out. Was it sort of 20 years ago, the Russians threw in the towel. The British never really got control of Afghanistan. They're not really controllable, I don't think, those people.
Because they don't have any particular ruler. They have their allegiances to their warlords.
Yeah, and I think it's a complete sort of misunderstanding to imagine they're going to go in and set up a nice little parliament and they're all going to be nice and polite to each other and call themselves the honourable member for Kabul. It's just not going to happen. It seems to be a basic...
Africa's the same. When I went there, we've got it's tribal.
Yes.
Clans and tribes, and what's happening in Mugabe?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that's a joke. He's arresting all the people who counted the votes. The people in charge of the vote counting, he's having them all arrested because he's saying they undercounted how many votes he got. I mean, it's a joke, isn't it, really?
Unfortunately, I've got friends who are still out there in Zimbabwe, British people who are on farms and all in there.
Because
most
of them have gone, haven't they?
I know.
I think I read there's about 60 left out of 4,000, 5,000, something like that.
Oh, and I'm in Kenya. Jeff, when he was working in Kenya, lived all through the Mau problem there.
Yeah.
So it's been very varied, very wide in backgrounds.
I think it just proves that you can't kind of graft your own system onto somebody else's continent and expect it to work that well, because it never seems to, does it? Really, unless
you don't. It's very interesting though. But, if you're prepared to listen and exchange viewpoints and ideas, you learn an awful lot from each other. We do. I love talking about countries, history, geography, just a way of life.
I like it, Jeanette, as long as I have the faintest idea what I'm talking about. But,
you learn from other people.
Sorry?
You learn from other people.
Oh, you do?
And you read. So many people today don't read, they get all the information from the television in front of them,
yes.
or looking it up on the internet.
Yes.
It's limited.
Yeah.
Read.
Well, I mean, I do. But I do. Actually, I can remember talking to people from the Naval Commandos. Like there was Jerry Pocock. He told me. Oh yeah, he said I was on the Royal Oak when it was torpedoed.
Oh,
now I didn't know what the Royal Oak was when I first spoke to him. I said, oh, was that an aircraft carrier? I got it mixed up with the Ark Royal, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was the first major naval casualty from the British point of view of the Second World War. In 1939, it was torpedoed in Scapa Flow, and it lost half the crew. About 800 out of about 1,600 were drowned.
Yeah.
And he was very lucky to get out of it alive. You know, he was part of this big historic event that I didn't even realise was a historic event until I'd gone into the sort of background of it.
Well, this is it. Jeff was waiting, and he had his draft was first to HMS Hood.
You know, yeah.
Well, that was blown up.
What year was he waiting to be drafted to HMS Hood? Like,
I would not know.
Because it was May 1941. It bumped into the Bismarck and blew up.
Yeah. When they first heard about it, they were at sea, and he, being in Menestius, which was a mine layer, not a sleeper layer. I mean, I've got pictures. This whole album I've given to his son in America. But you've got the pictures with all the mines and all on the ship. That was a tinderbox. You only had to have a stray bomb from with a Luftwaffe plane. Yeah. The whole bloody thing just blew up.
Well, I suppose the best you could say was if you did get hit, at least it would be quick.
It would be very quick.
It would be very much a case of here today and gone tomorrow. You know,
they were very much like that.
Yeah.
And I think when they heard that HMS Hood had blown up, they said, "Oh my God, I hope it hasn't hit one of the mines we've laid." But then they heard the facts, you know.
No, I mean it was up by sort of around the sort of west of Iceland, wasn't it?
Right, which is when he was doing they were on the convoy lot.
But it came as an awful shock. I remember talking to my mum about that, and you know, she was a girl, sort of about 17 at the time, and it was like Kennedy being assassinated. It was like Lady Di in the car crash. It was a great national catastrophe that the Hood, you know, the great ship of the British fleet, had just blown up, and there was 3 survivors, weren't there? That was.
It was like in Singapore. You had the
Prince of Wales and the Repulse, the Repulse and the Prince of Wales, wasn't it?
They went.
Well, that's because they had because they didn't realise that what they needed was aircraft carriers, and the battleships had really had their day. You know what I mean? That a very cheap aeroplane or two could put paid to millions of pounds worth of battleship.
I know.
Fairly easily. It took a long time for that lesson to sink in to the admiral.
I read a very interesting book by on the American War. I read the Far East as well. Japan and things. I've always been interested and wanted to know why, because a lot of my father's family were in Australia, you see, that side. And there, of course, you look what they had at the Medway and all. And I read this interesting book. It's called Flags of Our Fathers.
I've heard the title.
It's all about Iwo Jima. Area.
That's an area that you know, because it's kind of American. I suppose it doesn't come home so much.
But then again, you see, you didn't have your wide education like me. I was brought up in American mission school in India.
So, you see, what gets me, I suppose, is that there are so many Hollywood movies glamorizing everything the Americans ever touched in their lives. That you sort of think that the other people need a bit of recognition too, like the Russians who lost God knows how many millions in the Second World War, you know? If you didn't do some research, you'd never even know that Stalingrad had anything to do with anything.
Well, I've got the book Stalingrad here. Jeff liked his history.
Yes.
He read, but anybody who's been in the Navy, days and days and days you read. It's lying in your bunk.
Yes.
And you like your music, because those were your 2 forms of recreation.
I think my favourite naval film is, you know, The Cruel Sea.
Oh, yes,
that's a lovely film. And the
beautiful.
And the book that goes along with it is there's a lot more in the book than there is in the film.
Yeah. I know.
So, great stuff. You know.
Well, I've got all those books, and of course I shall take them with me to Canada. I've got all sorts of books which are interesting to to the family, the children, you know.
Yeah.
And I would not get rid of those. Those and my pictures here.
Yes.
The rest of the stuff are just things. They can go to hell.
I mean, like my kids, I can't get, because they're young, they're not remotely interested in what the grandfather that they never met did in the war. But when they have their own kids, I think you start, I don't know why, you start becoming, well, how did I get here? You know, what's all this all about?
You know,
and it's only the last few years that I've got interested.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey's son, Alan, in America, never interested in services. And there was a bit of a disappointment because his father always wanted to go to Dartmouth and things like that.
Yes.
But my son, who was his stepson, he, in a way, was even closer to his stepfather.
Yeah.
And when Jeff died, I gave Ian, my son, his green beret, his fighting knife.
Oh, you still have it? Because I would love to know what happened to all that clobber of my dad's.
Well, there you are. And I gave my son his fighting knife, original fighting knife, which he had with his Q.
I wish we had that. I don't know what my dad did with it. He probably pawned it to put the money on a horse or something. I don't know.
Because when he died, I said, having had all the indignities of cancer and strokes and all the course, excuse my language.
Yes.
I said I did not want I said, do you want a service funeral, Jeffrey? He used to talk very freely.
Yes.
And he said, what? And wrap me in the supposed Union flag? Union Jack? No, thank you. He says, what Union? There isn't one. There's only one true flag. That's the flag of St. George.
Really?
Which was the Royal Naval Ensign.
Yeah, the white ensign, it is. Yeah.
The flag of St. George with a little bit in the Union in the corner.
Yes.
So I had that. I borrowed it from somebody else.
Yes.
And that was what his coffin had on it. One wreath of Oriental lilies, because we love those, and his green beret and his medals.
That's amazing that you still had those things, you know, the green beret, my dad's medals out of
son, who came from Canada, and his son. And when I was going back, I gave them to Ian with a covering letter written on Royal Naval Commando Association paper.
Oh, yes.
So that if he was stopped, because it was a knife, you see.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's an offensive weapon, isn't it?
Yes.
It's about as offensive as weapons
get.
can.
And I gave him his stepfather's blazer with the badge on it and his tie.
Yeah.
Now, Ian says every November, Armistice Day, they still call it in Canada, always hold it on the 11th, never mind nearest Sunday. He takes his two sons, 14 and 10. He said, young Christian wore his granddad's green beret, and the little fellow wore his miniature medals.
Yes.
Because the real, his war medals and things I gave to his own son.
Yeah.
I'm very fair-minded like this about the two boys, because they were both our sons.
Yes.
And that is how we look at them.
My sister did a very similar thing with her granddaughter. Because we haven't even got Dad's medals, you know, like the DSM, we don't know what happened to them. But she got a replica made, and she had her granddaughter, this is my niece, who's about 6 or something like that, marching in the Remembrance Day parade up in Birmingham. They live in Birmingham.
Yes.
And so she sent me all these photographs of little Ellie proudly marching along, you know, with her, what would it be, her...
it was her grandfather?
Well, her great-grandfather. It would be her... No, her great-grandfather. It would be her great-grandfather's DSM. So this, you know, that was a nice moment.
Yeah, very nice.
All right.
So she lives in Birmingham. That is where they had the last laying up of the standard.
That's for the association?
Yes.
Yeah,
and it hangs in St. Augustine's Church.
Where is that?
Edgbaston.
I don't know the church. The main church is the cathedral, of course.
Yeah, but this is this is the one.
Yeah.
It was Lady Mountbatten came for that.
Yeah.
And they always
she must be getting on. How old is Lady Mountbatten these days? She must be.
She is in her late 80s, the same as the men.
Yeah.
You see, because I was in India at the time of independence, 1947, when Lord Louis Mountbatten was the last Viceroy of India and the first Governor General.
Yeah.
And Lady Mountbatten, this is Patricia Mountbatten.
Yeah.
Not Pamela.
Oh, no, I'm not very...
They're the eldest one of Pamela Mountbatten.
Oh, this is his daughter, or
he only had 2 daughters. That was the thing.
No, but when you say Lady Mountbatten, I thought would be his wife.
No,
She was
He was Countess Mountbatten. He was Lord Mountbatten. She was Countess.
Oh, well, yeah, no, but
and because they didn't have a...
You're blinding me with heraldry now.
Daughter, Lady Bourbon, she was Bourbon. That's Patricia.
Yeah.
She was took on the title of Countess Mountbatten of Burma.
Yeah. Okay.
And she was a patron. Of course, she's charming woman, absolutely charming.
Because he's the hero of what was that Noel Coward film, In Which We Serve?
Oh,
was
that's
it?
Right. That's Kelly.
Yeah, I mean Noel Coward is playing Mountbatten really in that film, isn't he?
That was HMS Kelly.
That's it. Yeah, he was sunk, wasn't he? South of Crete somewhere. He was during the. I don't know if it was during the evacuations of Crete, or I'm not quite sure.
That area. That area.
Yeah.
Anyway, my love.
All right, well, lovely talking to you.
Thank you for listening to my ramblings as well.
Well, that's why I rang, to listen to,
Well, but you just you set off one train of thought,
Well, no, but it's a form of history, isn't it? It's kind of real history when it's not just history in a book or on TV. You're talking to somebody, your husband.